is a sign of political maturity and a sign that you're sending a message to the powers that be in this country and elsewhere that the new generations that are coming into public life are not prepared to tolerate the continuing oppression of the Palestinians by the Israeli government. That is now very clear. We do this regularly, and at my age, I can tell you that for the last 25 to 30 years, I have been speaking for the Palestinians and hoping that some solution would be found. Because it is not the case that the movement which is trying to defend itself, trying to win its freedom, this is the last colonial situation which is a hangover from the 20th century. And it is still not being solved or resolved. Now, before I come to why I think this is the case, I think we have to understand that the mood in Israel is incredibly ugly today. That students, Israeli students, have been demonstrating in the streets of their country with the slogan, "Kill all Arabs." This has happened a few days ago, and it's carrying on. And it makes me very sad more than angry. Sad that they don't know their own history. Sad that they have forgotten that the slogan of "Kill all the Jews" was a fascist slogan in the Europe of the 20s and 30s and 40s. Sad that they can't see the similarities between some of the things they're doing and how they're behaving towards the Palestinians and what was done to them by the European right. That is what makes me sad. What makes me angry is that the world watches this, and by the world I mean the powers that be, and do nothing. And why these double standards? Why is there no power at the Security Council today even thinking of, leave alone demanding, a no-fly zone over Gaza? They were very quick to do it in Libya when they wanted to topple the government. They are very quick to intervene in it. Why is no one saying, this is a classic situation where you do need a no-fly zone to stop Israeli planes coming and bombing that little strip? And what is this strip? It's where 1.5, 1.6 million people live. It is a ghetto. It is blockaded. There are sanctions against it. Till recently, the border with Egypt was usually kept closed. That is what is happening. And if you read some of the statements that are coming out from Israel, it's not just these unfortunate young students who know no better. It is some of the big politicians and political leaders and opinion makers in that country. This is a major article published in the Jerusalem Post yesterday by Gilad Sharon, whose father, Ariel Sharon, as you know, distinguished himself in carrying out the massacres in Sabra and Shatila in Lebanon many years ago, and then was a hardline Prime Minister of Israel for some time to come. This is what he writes. With the elimination of a murderous terrorist and the destruction of Hamas's long-range missile stockpile, the operation was off to an auspicious start. But what now? This must not be allowed to end as did Operation Cast Lead. That was 3 years ago. We bomb them, they fire missiles at us, and then a ceasefire followed by showers, namely sporadic missile fire. A strong opening isn't enough. You also have to know how to finish, and finish decisively if it isn't clear whether the ball crossed the goal line or not. To accomplish this, you need to achieve what the other side can't bear, can't live with, and our initial bombing campaign isn't it. The desire to prevent harm to innocent civilians in Gaza will lead to harming the truly innocent, the residents of southern Israel. The residents of Gaza are not innocent. They elected Hamas. The Gazans aren't hostages. They choose this freely and must live with the consequences. And he says, ends, there is no middle path here. Either the Gazans and their infrastructure are made to pay the price, or we reoccupy the entire Gaza Strip. Otherwise, there will be no decisive victory. And we are running out of time. We must achieve victory quickly. This needs to end quickly, with a bang, not a whimper. Now, with rhetoric like this, it is worth asking, what is terrorism? Is the terror imposed on a small community living in a tiny strip by the Israeli state different or less harmful than groups firing the odd rocket? Is there an equality here? Is there an equation that both sides are equal? No. There is no equality. On the one side, you have a state backed by the European Union and the United States of America, armed to the teeth, subsidized by the United States, the sixth largest army in the world, nuclear weapons, so no one can even dream of attacking it, leave alone taking it on militarily, trying to crush the last remaining hope of the Palestinian people to achieve statehood and nationhood. And I ask, and look, there are many, many people of Jewish origin all over the world who are angered by this as well. I have been speaking to Jewish friends who have been crying. Just 2 days ago, a woman I didn't know hailed me on the street and said, "Are you so-and-so?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "What do you think of Gaza?" And I said, "This is what I think of Gaza." And she said, she's in her 80s. She said, "I'm Jewish and I'm ashamed of what they're doing." I said, "You shouldn't feel ashamed. Why should you feel what that government is doing is shame? It's not your responsibility." She said, "But they speak in my name. And that is what the shame is." And we discussed, interestingly enough, the Warsaw Ghetto, when at the end of the Second World War, the Germans decided to attack and wipe out the ghetto. And I just, before I came, read out Hitler's, one of his deputies, orders to the SS battalion, which he commanded, on the 16th of February 1943. "For security reasons, I hereby order that the Warsaw Ghetto be destroyed after the concentration camp has been moved elsewhere. The razing of the ghetto is necessary because Warsaw will never quiet down and its criminal deeds will never end as long as the ghetto stands. A general plan for the destruction of the ghetto must be submitted to me. At least it is necessary that the dwelling space for 500,000 subhumans available until now, would never be fit for Germans. It should completely disappear. In this way, Warsaw, that city of 1 million people, an active center of decay and mutiny, will be reduced." Now, similar language, not the same, similar language is being used by the Israelis to explain what they're doing in Gaza. So we can't have double standards. We have to oppose them. What are the choices in this region? The choices for me now are very straightforward. For years and years, Many of us and many Palestinians believe that there could be an independent Palestinian state. They believed it would happen. It didn't happen. The Oslo Accords proved to be illusory. So what do we do now? I have been arguing, I have to say to you honestly, for the last 8 to 10 years, time flies, that there is no possibility now of an independent Palestinian state. All the Palestinians might get are tiny little Bantustans, overlooked by Israeli tanks, dominated by the Israeli army. That is not independence. Much better than this, much better than this, would be to argue now that forget the two-state solution and argue for a single state in that region. A single state of Israel-Palestine in which everyone has the same rights, whether you are Arab Christians, Arab Muslims, whether you belong to other minorities, or whether you are Jews. And that is, I think, the only way forward. And for some years now, a movement initiated from within Israel and taken up by people elsewhere, a non-violent movement, the movement for boycott, divestment and sanctions, has been active. And I would urge you, all of you, to think very seriously about building this movement. Because the Israeli government can't have it all their own way. They oppose violent attacks, or violent defenses, or a violent resistance, and they are opposed to a non-violent resistance through the movement for boycott, divestment and sanctions. This is a movement supported by Bishop Tutu, supported by Ronnie Kasrils, supported by people who fought against apartheid in South Africa. We don't want apartheid in this region. And this is where a proper democratic multinational state could be built and should be built. There is no other long-term future because it can't go on like this. It simply can't go on like this regardless of the passivity of the West. So these are the choices before us. Obviously, there's a big demonstration being planned on Saturday, big public demonstration. I'm not sure what the details are. It's from Trafalgar Square to the Israeli embassy, the usual route. And it would be good to show up in numbers there, and to show that people are angry, and to show that people are not following blindly what the media is reporting or what their governments are saying. Because most of the European states now behave like vassal states. They have no independent opinion of their own. They follow the United States. And that is what is happening in this country. So full solidarity, total solidarity with the civilians of Gaza. You know, 3 generations of one family were destroyed yesterday. 3 complete generations. Just imagine if that had happened on the other side. A rocket had hit some tenement in Tel Aviv and destroyed 3 generations. Just imagine how it would have been reported. Just imagine the horror and outrage. But these people dying are, after all, Palestinian Arabs. We are used to it. And as Sharon says, they are all guilty by virtue of being Gazans. What is the logic? What logic is this? What if the Palestinians applied that logic and said, Sharon, you said it first, we are all guilty because we voted Hamas, when every Israeli is guilty because they voted in Netanyahu. And we're going to kill everyone. That's what it is. Kill, 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 kill. Everyone's guilty. That is an exterminist logic. And it's a logic which shouldn't be supported. These are hard times and bad times for the Palestinians, but also for the Israelis. They may not be aware of it, but what they are doing does not benefit them. Because if they carry on like this, it will end badly for them over the next 20, 25, 30 years. We don't know. People will not tolerate this in the region. So, solidarity with the Gazans, an immediate ceasefire, no prevarication, and come out and march on Saturday. Thank you. I will take some questions. It's always for me the best part. I have to go to UCL and do the same thing in 20 minutes time. So let's have 15 minutes of questions. Yeah.
All right, guys, this is how it's going to roll. 3 questions at a time. Keep it short. Please don't go on for a bit. I'm going to have to stop you if you're going on for a bit too long. After the questions, there's going to be a brief update and reminder as to things that you can do to help us. But can I have hands up? First 3 questions, please. Hands up. Right over there, the gentleman over there, number 1. Gentleman over there, number 2. And one more. There's one. Where? Gentleman over there, number 3. Okay. Question, please.
Okay, Tariq, would you agree firstly that the BBC coverage is biased? I would argue it's strongly biased in favour of the Israelis. And if you do agree with that, why would you think this is? Or just to discuss that.
Yeah, I do agree that the BBC coverage is very biased indeed. It has been for some time. And the reason for that is that the BBC now, ever since the Iraq War, has been neutered, first by the Hutton report, by kicking out the Director General who was in favour of a more independent line, and it applies a self-censorship and is closely linked now, many of its people, to the Foreign Office. They don't even need to be told, they do it without asking. It's not only the BBC, I have to tell you. American television networks are much worse. France and Germany are no different. So it's the state television networks and the private television networks are more or less at one. In the United States it is infinitely worse, because people, they barely speak there about the Palestinians except as terrorists. And what is always a problem with the media, even when they present the bombing of Gaza, it is never contextualized. Contextualization has gone out of media coverage of this and other events. But you have an advantage which my generation didn't when we were young, is that you can get onto the web and find alternative sources of information and alternative images, and I suggest you do that. Don't ever just rely on the BBC or CNN or these global networks.
I was wondering what you think of Norman Finkelstein's defense of the two-state solution.
Well, I don't agree with Norman Finkelstein. He still believes that there's room for a two-state solution, and I think that that time is gone. It went 2 years after the Oslo Accords were signed, and it's very, very clear to me that a two-state solution just isn't possible. Where are they going to have the second state? Who is going to remove all these Israeli settlements from Palestinian lands that encroach on more and more territory? Who is going to stop the Israeli settlements in East Jerusalem, which encroach on more and more Palestinian territories, use money to buy out Palestinians, put in settlers? The Israelis, by what they are doing, have themselves made a two-state solution impossible. And I think the position of Norman Finkelstein on this, and my dear friend Noam Chomsky, is misguided. I won't put it any stronger than that. But for me, there is no other way out now, except arguing, fighting for a one-state solution. And this is where the BDS campaign comes in. It becomes extremely important.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that historically, at least in the last 20 years, there's been a massive divergence between calls for a one-state solution and BDS. How in hell do you propose that you could get to a one-state solution by supporting BDS, which has as its aim the ability to the opportunity to try and deny the impact upon the world of one side of the argument? How do you get a one-state solution, a meeting together of both Israelis and Palestinians through BDS, which is only hoping to negate one side of the argument?
I would say that it's not that the BDS campaign itself will lead to a single-state solution, but an effective campaign of boycott, divestment and sanctions will have an impact on the Israeli economy, even if it's not a huge impact. I mean, the South African apartheid regime always used to deny that the campaign of sanctions was having an impact till the papers were discovered later, where it was having an impact. So I think it will have an impact, which is why it's being attacked so savagely from within Israel. Of course, on its own, it will just show that the Israelis can't carry on like this forever. For a proper one-state solution, you will have to have a transformation, in my opinion, of the political culture of Israel and the emergence of political forces inside Israel who believe that there is no other way forward except equal rights for all their citizens. On the part of the Palestinians, they too will have to understand, not all do, though many are beginning to do this, that the idea of two states which sounded fine in the 60s or 70s and 80s and 90s is now a dead letter. And that by continuing, the PLO in particular, by continuing to collaborate with the Israeli government, they're cutting their own throats. So what could they do? Or what could the Hamas leadership do? I've said this publicly to their faces, and I will repeat it to them. What they could say is the reality of the present situation is this. There is no Palestinian Authority. There is no independent Palestinian entity in the region. Everything is dominated, controlled, manipulated by Israel. So we are no longer going to go on with this farce anymore. We hereby dissolve the Palestinian Authority. We are now all citizens of the cities in which we live, in this region, and that is how we will carry on living. This should be their message to Israel and the Western governments who are giving them lots of money. We can't live like this. It would be dramatic were they to do that. But so far they haven't.
Just to get a bit out of the context.
Would you speak up?
Just to get a little bit out of the context of Palestine, are you aware of other countries and other regions in Africa where same situations are happening, mostly in Congo, where people are being killed and massacred and it's a silence because of another country trying to take over the territory, and no one is speaking about it? For countries who don't get the media like Palestine and Israel going on and no one speaks about it, what do you think about it, just to know your position, and how do you think we should get upon it, and what should we do as the young people?
Yeah, well, obviously, I agree with you very strongly. And the magazine on whose editorial board I sit, the New Left Review, if you go to their website, has covered a lot about what is happening, particularly in the Congo and the Cameroons. And I think it is a disgrace that Africa is a forgotten continent on that level. But you see, behind it is not, the basic attitude behind it is not so dissimilar. They're Africans after all. They're Palestinian Arabs after all. So we shouldn't ever fall into the trap of counterposing one struggle to the other. Whereas what is, in Israel-Palestine it's very clear what is happening. What is happening in the Congo is a brutal, corrupting civil war that, according to the figures we have, has already led to the loss of at least between 4 and 5 million lives. 4 to 5 million lives in the Congo. And the wars are carried out by proxies. And the people who carry out these wars have been hosted and feted and defended by Western governments instead of being charged at the War Crimes Tribunal. That is only reserved for people the West doesn't like. If the crimes are committed by the West itself or the countries it support, no tribunals for them. That is all justified. So of course what you say is absolutely true. Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk about compared to 2009.
So could you speak up? Yeah.
So there's a lot of people who have talked about how compared to the 2009 operation, the Arab Spring has happened and maybe more Arab states will be more lenient to show solidarity with Palestine. Do you think that's happened?
Not so far. I mean, what has happened this time, till now, is that the Egyptian Prime Minister and Foreign Minister have arrived in Gaza. The foreign ministers of 4 other Arab countries are arriving in Gaza, including the Turkish Foreign Minister. These are not unimportant events. I don't want to downgrade them, but on their own they do nothing. I mean, given that this is a continuous process, why has the new Egyptian government and why has the Turkish government not just done, I don't say make war, but done one very simple thing and said we are breaking off all diplomatic and trade relations with Israel as long as it continues subjecting the Palestinians to this form of torture. And the Turkish government the same. Erdogan goes around masquerading as the new sort of Sultan of Turkey, crushing the Kurds in his own country. But why the hell doesn't he break off relations with Israel, if they mean any? That would mean something. That would begin to isolate this country. They don't do it, so how dare, they have very little on which to say to the West, don't do this and that, because they are complicit in it. And it's not that these things would be unpopular. I think 80 to 90% of Egyptians would support that. But in order to do it would mean annoying the United States, which is the great patron and protector of the Israeli state, and that they don't want to do. But look, this discussion will carry on. I have to leave you now, but thanks.
A slight recap. Just a reminder of the petition. If you haven't signed it already, can you please do so? Those people with the petition in hand right now, could you just hold it up? Come to the front and just deposit it with us over here. Sign the petition, please. Sign it. There will be a general meeting at 9 p.m. and Mr. Temp is coming at 9:30. There will be a performance then. So Peter Temp, he'll be here at 9:30. Peter Temp will be here at 9:30 for a performance. Stay for the General Assembly. Come and watch the performance. Support us. You know how to get in contact. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.